have shown you my license, my registration.
No, I'll decide what's valid. How'd you pay for this vehicle?
With my own money. Same way anyone does.
Right. Cars like this don't come from honest work, not in my experience.
You just told me on camera
that I cannot afford this.
Sheriff Saul Howard had been in law enforcement for 16 years. He had made hundreds of stops. He believed he could read a situation before a word was spoken. The night he pulled behind a jet black Cadillac Escalade at the Hatcher Road BP station outside Caldwell, North Carolina, he was certain again. He was wrong in a way that would cost him everything. Howard positioned his patrol vehicle directly behind the Escalade, blocking the exit, and activated his lights. The vehicle was brand new. Temporary tags sat in the rear window. The woman who stepped out of the driver's seat was in her early 30s, dressed in a dark blazer and slacks, with the composed bearing of someone who had just come from a long day at an office. Howard watched her from behind his windshield for several seconds before he got out. He had already made his decision. He approached with his flashlight raised and his hand resting on his belt. He told her that in his experience, cars like the one she was driving did not come from honest work. He told her he wanted to know how a woman like her ended up behind the wheel of something that expensive. The woman kept her hands visible. She asked him, without raising her voice, what traffic violation she had committed and what the legal basis for the stop was. Howard told her he would ask the questions. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from. If you believe that what you are about to read should never happen to anyone, hit like and subscribe. Every story on this channel documents what happens when racial profiling meets the wrong person. This is one of those stories. What Sheriff Saul Howard did not know was that the woman standing in front of him had just finished a 13-hour shift at the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Charlotte Field office. Her name was Tanisha Coppersmith. She was a special agent in the Organized Crime Division, 22 months into a joint operation with the Drug Enforcement Administration targeting a money laundering network, moving illicit funds across 4 states. She had graduated summa cum laude from Spelman College. She had earned her law degree from the University of Virginia School of Law. She had passed the Bureau's full background investigation, psychological evaluation, and physical fitness screening without a single flag. She had spent 4 years of her career learning, in precise detail, how men who abused institutional authority operated, how they built cases, covered tracks, and convinced themselves their power was permanent. The Escalade had been purchased with 4 years of federal savings and a $12,000 inheritance from her Aunt Gloria, who had worked the same hotel housekeeping position for 31 years because she wanted someone in the family to have options she never had. Tanisha bought the car the month after the funeral. She had never missed a payment. The Hatcher Road BP station was on her direct route home to her apartment in Mooresville, 18 miles north. She had stopped there more than 20 times in the past year. Same pump when it was available, fuel, and a bottle of water. 18 minutes, door to door, and she would be home. Tonight had been particularly long. She had spent most of the day reviewing financial records in connection with the DEA operation, skipped lunch to finish an evidentiary summary due by end of business, and sat through a 2-hour call with prosecutors in the afternoon. Her feet ached. Her eyes were tired. She had inserted her card into the pump when the lights came on behind her. Howard had made his decision before she turned around. Tanisha narrated every movement before making it. She reached into her jacket and produced her driver's license, then walked to the passenger side of the Escalade and retrieved the vehicle registration and insurance card from the glove compartment. She handed all 3 documents to Howard. He examined them under his flashlight. The license showed her photograph, her name, her address in Mooresville. The registration listed the same name on the same vehicle. The insurance was current. Everything matched. Everything was valid. Howard handed the documents back and told her that registration paperwork could be forged. He told her temporary tags were easy to fabricate around a stolen vehicle. He told her he needed to verify ownership properly before he could let her go. Tanisha asked him, with the precise calm of someone trained to stay composed in rooms with dangerous people, to run the vehicle identification number. She told him the call would take under 2 minutes. She asked him again directly, specifically to state the articulable, reasonable suspicion that had justified the stop. Howard said the temporary tags were enough. Tanisha's hands stayed at her sides. She reached into the inside pocket of her blazer, narrated the movement clearly, and produced her Federal Bureau of Investigation credentials. Badge, photograph, full name, badge number, Charlotte Field Office, Organized Crime Division. Howard took them. He turned the badge over. He checked the weight of it, examined the photograph, and read the printed text slowly under his flashlight. Then he handed them back and told her that replica FBI badges were available online. He told her anyone could order one. The gas station attendant had stopped working. A man at a pickup truck 3 spaces over had his phone raised. Howard was aware of it. He did not stop. He had now rejected a valid driver's license, valid registration, valid insurance, and official federal law enforcement credentials. Not because the documents had failed, because none of them matched the conclusion he had already reached before he got out of his vehicle. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a decision. The gas station had changed around them without anyone directing. A woman who had pulled in 2 minutes earlier had not left. Her engine was still running, window down, phone raised through the gap. The attendant had propped the station door open with his foot. 2 teenagers near the air pump stood without speaking. 4 phones were recording from separate angles. 3 exterior security cameras covered the pumps, the forecourt, and the entrance to the lot. Howard was aware of all of it. He kept going anyway. That detail matters. A man who slows down when people are watching believes, somewhere, that he might be wrong. Howard did not slow down. He was not a man who thought he might be wrong. He was a man who had spent 16 years in a county where his judgment had never been seriously questioned, and he had confused that silence for confirmation. Tanisha stood with her hands at her sides and waited. Then, a second patrol vehicle turned into the station. Deputy Ray Sutton was 26 years old and 8 months into the job. He stepped out, looked at the scene, Howard with his flashlight up, Tanisha standing at the rear of the Escalade, 4 phones recording, and understood immediately that something had gone badly wrong. He did not know what. He walked toward them. Tanisha turned to face him. She identified herself as Special Agent Tanisha Coppersmith of the FBI's Charlotte Field Office. She told him she had been detained without cause for approximately 25 minutes. She told him that Sheriff Howard had rejected valid documentation and official federal credentials. She told him, clearly and without drama, that she needed him to understand he was a witness to this interaction. Sutton looked at Howard. Howard told him she was being uncooperative. Then he told Tanisha to step away from the vehicle. He told her she was under arrest for obstruction of a law enforcement investigation. Sutton's face lost its color. He opened his mouth. Howard cut him off before a word came out. Tanisha did not move. She looked at Sutton. She told him to think carefully about what he did next, because when the federal investigation began, every person at this station would be called as a witness, and he would be asked what he did when he saw this happening. Sutton said nothing. Howard reached for his handcuffs. If a law enforcement officer rejected your credentials and tried to arrest you for asking a legal question, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you think what you are reading right now should never happen to anyone, share this story. Someone in your feed needs to see it. Howard had the cuffs in his hand when the highway noise shifted. A vehicle had turned off the road and into the station. Not a patrol vehicle, not a county vehicle. A black sport utility vehicle moving at the unhurried pace of something that does not need to announce itself. The plates were federal government issue. 2 people stepped out. The first was a man in his 40s in a dark suit. The second was a woman in her late 50s, silver-haired, in civilian clothes that did nothing to reduce the weight she carried when she moved. Her name was Diane Kelleher. She was the assistant special agent in charge of the FBI's Charlotte Field Office. She was Tanisha Coppersmith's direct supervisor. She was not there because someone called her. She was not there because an alert had been triggered. She was there because agents working active organized crime operations were required to check in with their supervisor upon arriving home at the end of each shift. When Tanisha's check-in was 40 minutes overdue, Kelleher called. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. Bureau protocol for agents on active operations required a supervisor response when contact failed. Kelleher had driven the route herself. She had not been summoned. She had simply followed the evidence of where her agent should have been and wasn't, which was, incidentally, exactly the method Tanisha used to find the people she investigated. Kelleher took in the full scene in 4 seconds. Tanisha standing at the rear of the Escalade, hands at her sides. Howard with his handcuffs out. Sutton frozen between them. 4 phones recording. 3 cameras running. She walked toward Howard. She identified herself by name, title, and office. Then she asked him, in a voice that reached every corner of the forecourt, to explain the legal basis for the stop. Howard opened his mouth. Nothing came out. 17 people were recording the moment a 22-year career began to end. Howard spoke. He told Kelleher he had been conducting a routine inquiry into a suspicious vehicle. He mentioned the temporary tags. He mentioned his 16 years in law enforcement and the instinct he had developed for things that did not add up. He mentioned that federal credentials could be purchased online as replicas. Kelleher let him finish without interrupting once. When he stopped, she summarized, he had pulled behind a vehicle that was legally parked at a gas station. He had not observed a traffic violation. He had not run the plates before approaching the driver. He had rejected a valid driver's license, valid registration, valid insurance, and official federal law enforcement credentials. He had threatened a search without probable cause. He had then attempted to place one of her agents under arrest for asking him to state his legal authority. She asked him whether that summary was accurate. Howard said nothing. Kelleher turned to Sutton and told him to call the department's duty captain. Then she turned back to Howard. She told him to surrender his badge and his weapon. She told him he was done. Tanisha gathered her documents from the hood of the Escalade where Howard had placed them during the stop. She held them for a moment. Then she looked at him. She told him she worked organized crime. She told him she had spent 4 years studying how men who abused institutional authority operated, how they mistook the power they had been given for the judgment they had never earned. She told him she knew how to build a federal case from a single night, and she told him he had given her everything she needed. Then she got into the Escalade, started the engine, and pulled out of the Hatcher Road BP station heading north toward Mooresville. Howard watched the taillights until they were gone. He was still holding his badge when Kelleher extended her hand. The footage was online before midnight. One of the witnesses posted it at 11:43. By the following morning, it had 400,000 views. By Thursday, every major network had aired the clip of Howard telling Tanisha that cars like hers did not come from honest work. Legal analysts called it one of the most explicit documented cases of racial profiling of a federal agent in recent memory. Civil rights organizations issued statements within hours. The FBI confirmed that Special Agent Coppersmith was a decorated member of the Charlotte Field Office and that the Bureau was treating the incident with full seriousness. The internal investigation began that same week. Over the following 6 weeks, investigators working alongside the FBI's Civil Rights Division reviewed every stop record filed under Howard's name going back 4 years. They found 9 documented cases in which Howard had stopped minority drivers in late-model vehicles without articulable, reasonable suspicion and without any stated legal basis in the official report. In 3 of those cases, no report had been filed at all. Howard was terminated at the conclusion of the investigation. The state of North Carolina revoked his law enforcement certification. Under the county's official misconduct clause, his 16-year pension was forfeited in full. He was 44 years old with no certification, no pension, and a viral video that appeared in the first results of any search conducted under his name. His wife filed for legal separation 4 months after the footage broke. The house went on the market 6 months after that. Howard filed for personal bankruptcy the following year. Tanisha filed suit in federal court under Title 42 United States Code, Section 1983, citing violations of her 4th and 14th Amendment rights. Her attorneys, working with the FBI's Civil Rights Division, presented the 9 prior stops as documented evidence of a pattern. The lawsuit named Howard personally, the county, and the sheriff's department. The county's outside counsel reviewed the evidence and reached their conclusion in 72 hours. The footage was indefensible. The pattern was documented. The plaintiff was a federal agent with a clean record and a direct supervisor who had witnessed the attempted arrest. There was no version of a trial that ended well for the county. The settlement was reached privately, 14 months after the stop, $4 million. A consent decree mandating body cameras for every deputy in the department, quarterly bias training countywide, a civilian oversight board with independent investigative authority, and a requirement that every vehicle stop be documented with a specific, articulable legal basis before any contact with a driver. Deputy Ray Sutton was appointed acting sheriff during the investigation period. Within his first 30 days, he implemented every reform in the consent decree and requested a formal audit of every stop record filed under Howard's tenure. Tanisha Coppersmith received a $4 million private settlement. She was promoted within the Organized Crime Division 8 months after the incident. The joint DEA operation she had been working for 22 months concluded successfully the following spring, resulting in federal indictments across 3 states. She still drives the Escalade. She had a dash cam installed the week after the gas station. She wishes it was not necessary. It is. Saul Howard is 45 years old. He works a warehouse night shift at $14 an hour. His law enforcement certification is gone. His pension is gone. The video is not. Every employer who runs a background check finds it within minutes. In the 14 months since his termination, he has submitted 31 job applications. He has received 3 interviews. He has received 0 offers. He had 16 years on the job. He lost all of it in 25 minutes because he saw a black woman in an expensive car and decided, before she turned around, that she had no right to be there. Driving while black is not probable cause. Building something beautiful while black is not evidence of a crime. And when the person you choose to profile turns out to be the person whose job it is to investigate people exactly like you, the consequences do not just end careers. They dismantle everything you spent your life believing your authority would protect you from. Sheriff Saul Howard had 16 years in law enforcement and lost his badge, his pension, his marriage, and his house in 25 minutes at a gas station. The settlement was $4 million. Do you think that was enough, or should there have been criminal charges? Tell us exactly what you think in the comments. We read every single one.
If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with someone who would appreciate it, and let's keep building this community together. And before you go, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what stood out to you the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next.